Well, today I have a really special honor to be with a dear friend, someone I've known my whole life. Phil Munsey is, gosh, where do I even begin? I know Phil from years ago because when my dad and I would walk our dog, we would see Phil all the time. He was a close friend of my dad, and whenever my dad took a day off of church, we still went to church, and we went to Phil's church in Mission Viejo, and I remember going several times. He always honored our family and was dear friends of our whole family, very much influenced, I think, by my grandfather and others. Now, Phil is running a Champions Network for Joel Osteen Ministries, and we had a great encounter on Praise the Lord back in January and reignited our friendship, and it's been just great. He's been a spiritual father and a mentor to me, and just so happy to have him here. Would you welcome with me Phil Munsey?
Thank you.
Phil, hi.
Thank you, friend.
Great to see you.
Well, we're honored to be here, and of course, we, on behalf of Joel and Victoria and Lakewood Church, we're so honored. And Joe considers you a very dear friend, and so it's so exciting. And Bobby, I thank you for saying that you honor me as a father and a mentor, because I'm going to do something that you could be upset if you didn't think I was like a father, because I've talked to the producers, and I'm going to actually switch this. Instead of you interviewing me, I think it's time somebody interviews our pastor. What do you think?
Okay.
So look, there you go. I've been watching you, of course, since you were a young man, but watching the phenomena of what's happening with Hour of Power. And among the church community, among the secular community, everybody is just amazed at the favor of God that has come upon you and what's happening. Would you have ever thought 5 years ago you'd be doing what you're doing right now?
Well, first of all, this is totally crazy. Thank you for doing it. No, 5 years ago, we were doing Tree of Life, and we were doing a lot of work with the homeless. When we started that church, we gave, the first year, gave all of our money away. We were able to do that because a guy named Jim Case was able to paint a building that got us to meet there for free, and a number of other serendipitous things happened, and we did not have our eye on doing anything like this. And in fact, I would have probably really resisted if the Lord had told me to start a TV ministry. It just wouldn't have been something that would have crossed my mind. I would have started an internet ministry, and or a podcast or something like that. And so, having been called into this role, I've actually learned the power of television. I love it. It's been a lot of fun, and there's been a learning curve, but it's been amazing doing that, and at the same time shepherding this church, which has been a tremendous honor and a real privilege to be the pastor of this church.
What did you have to overcome in your mind to go from, first of all, this was expected, and when you're young and people say, you're probably going to be like your dad, you're going to be like your grandfather, that's a little, and then you come from a generation that's somewhat cynical. How did you have to get over those barriers to be comfortable with where you are now?
Well, I think one of the big challenges, first of all, coming into this church, friends, was, just my age, just that I'm so young, and can I shepherd a church filled with people my parents' age and my grandparents' age? And can I have real spiritual authority in that community? And then to have I had some experience in television, but not in production or anything like that. So I didn't feel qualified. And that's why I sort of had, I think, to get sucked into this, is just kind of pulpit filling, and then what is my role here, and what am I going to do long term? And so I think it really, it just took the Holy Spirit doing what He does. There's something you said that I wanted to say in my interview of you today, which was when I was at TBN, there was an experience where I was wrestling with some of these things, and Phil was interviewing me, and he said something like, we were talking about blessing the next generation, and he said, fathers need to bless sons, not as sons, as they always have, but he needs to bless sons as fathers. And then he said, I bless you, not as a son, but as a spiritual father, to step into that role, to become a spiritual. And I actually felt something almost break in my spirit. When he said that, it really moved in me. And since then, January of this year, so almost a year ago, an amazing amount of things have happened. Not only my perspective of how to lead the church, but I think just even spiritually something big happened there for us.
And I think we're all seeing that. I think we're seeing this amazing. To me, Bobby, when I look at you, I see this a fusion again of you're very intellectual, you're very smart, you're very scholarly, your approach to the scriptures. You have become a spiritual father, though you are young, because you're the first voice on television. It's pretty typical to see younger pastors attracting younger audiences, older pastors attracting older audience. You're the first to ever attract both, to bring back to the table a cynical generation and an older, mature audience that's been there and done that and can't be fooled. And, you have really done that. And this is a phenomenal. To me, I think we're seeing history. That's why I told the producers, I got nothing to say. You're the guy that people want to know about because this is an amazing thing. What has been the most shocking or most surprising thing that has been happening in the last 3 years since you've been over our power?
That's the most shocking thing, what you just said. Really, that's it. You say, I know what I'm talking about. I'm not so sure. That's just it. I mean, the fact is, it's not even just the older people that we attract, but these are business owners, these are community leaders, these are professors, and many of you have had or still have tremendous careers, have been movers and shakers in the world. I just felt like I should be obedient to God, and I just feel very, very humble, really humbled at the idea that that this church would embrace me as a pastor. It really has meant the world, and I love being here, and I love this church with all my heart. And I don't know. I think a big part of trying to reach both has a lot to do with just being myself.
Yes.
I think I had a friend, Rich Watts, that said, never lose your pokey parts or something like that. It was like, always be you. Don't ever try and be refined and look like someone else. Just be Bobby, and that's what I've tried to do. So.
Well, you're really blazing a trail because you're showing a pattern of that this can work. Yeah. Often we get a sense in our culture that we hear about wars of nations against nation, but there's a subtle war between generations and generations. And that's part of what I saw when I interviewed you, that God was going to use you to really become a father, even though you were young, because it's not really an age thing, it's a gifting, it's a calling. And I think it is remarkable to this congregation and to the millions of viewers that they have seen you, not just as a son or a grandson, but that you have stepped into your own calling. And you are now fathering a generation with spiritual insight and wisdom. How do you feel about, though, you seem comfortable in embracing the legacy that you have?
Sure, of course.
It comes out of you. It's very easy to see your father and your grandfather coming out of you, and it's actually quite fun.
Well, look, all these sweet things you're saying about me, and it's hard for me not to feel like I just got lucky. I mean, I got a good hand, people get to, and I know we don't believe or endorse luck. I believe it was God's providence, but it's not like I'm this great strategic, really a lot of it's just having the right team, guys like Russ and Chad and Don Newen and Mark and different leaders, Glenn, and all the many leaders in this church that are doing their various things that it was already working. All those things were already happening. And so I think, I don't know, I just I feel very, very lucky. So what was your question? How do I feel about what now?
No, I think that you have become comfortable in the fact that, a lot of people your age are either resisting their legacy and their equity. And so you seem to have come to peace with letting your father, your mother, your grandfather, it flows and comes out of you, and you seem to be at peace and you're not fighting it.
No, well, my dad was the chief here, and he and I still talk all the time. He's not here today, but he's very often here in the audience, and we'll go to Whole Foods afterwards, and we'll get lunch, and we'll talk about things. And I used to have that relationship with my grandfather before he passed, and in fact, my dad, Grandpa, and I would get together all the time, and every Thursday, in fact, when I was at the Crystal Cathedral, my grandpa would meet with me for hours, and he would bump everyone else and keep hanging out with me, and he really invested in Hannah and I, and so I just, so much of who I am is because of my parents and my grandparents, and not just them, my grandma, grandpa personally, and my mom and my step-parent. I mean, there's just been, I am who I am because of my grandma, grandpa, and because of my dad. So for me, it would be uncomfortable not to pretend like, well, I just came up with this stuff, you know?
Well, you've embraced it, and I think it's great. I often tell people when they ask about, well, what's my purpose in life? I always ask them 3 questions. What makes you tick? What makes you ticked? And what trickle-down equity is in your legacy? And when you can get those 3 questions resolved, a lot of our destiny is in our history. Yeah. And this is what I think you're doing. You're giving us an example to your generation to not resist, not to fight, but to embrace everything that's come through. And I just want to go on record saying, I love your family. I love you. I love your heart. What I love about you, you're a phenomenal speaker and teacher, but you're a greater Christian. And that's what I love most about you.
Thank you, guys.
And I just want to say, on behalf of Joel Osteen and the Champions Network and so many pastors that are cheering for you, we are watching you. Pastors are, if you're a business person, you're watching the stock market. Well, pastors watch pastors. We spy on each other. I can tell you people are talking good behind your back. They're talking good behind this congregation. Yeah. We're all saying this is a phenomenon. We're so thrilled. And I just want to say to our audience, on behalf of so many of us that know what's going on behind the scene, be a part of this phenomenon. If you're younger and you're a millennialist, that you're often called in your 30s, and you would say, man, I've never supported anybody on Christian TV. That's the last thing I would ever do. You know what? Consider, now that you've found a voice that reflects your understanding of God, someone who's intelligent but also who's sincere, do that. Reach out and say, you know what? I'm going to support something that's pure and that's something good. And those of you that are older and you've been faithful over the years, this is your chance to do the greatest thing you could ever do, and that is support the next generation. Don't just treat them like sons, but treat them like the fathers they have now become. And in doing so, not only will you be honored, but you'll honor a ministry that I think, Bobby, I can just tell you, I just beam. When I watch you preach, when I watch the Hour of Power, man, there's a lot of times I get up off my seat because I got Pentecostal roots. And I'm like, yeah! But we love you, we're proud of you, and let me tell you something, your best days are ahead.
Thank you,
You believe
Phil.
that?
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me do this.
Thanks, Phil. Appreciate it.